हमें लगता है कि यही दुनिया है और इसके बाहर कोई दुनिया नहीं है और किसी को अगर टेक की दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है नहीं पता है तो वो एक लूजर है. I was very clear that's not the game I want to play. I want to play it on my terms, and that's why what I'm building right now is singularly diametrically opposite to what I've done for the last 12 years. I am a student of reflection. तो मैंने किसी को कभी भी एक कैपिटलिस्ट दरिंदे वाले अप्रोच से नहीं मारा. That I believe is my superpower. That I do not let what people think of me get to me. Never. It is my definition of success, true success in life. And for the first time, it struck me that what you're good at and what makes you happy could be two different things. If you are scared of failure, please practice failing. Because failure is an eventuality. Be truthful to yourself. That's the only thing that matters. Like, who would you rather be than not yourself?
How in your mind, mental model, mental framework, वो shift कैसे हुआ, वो journey कैसे बनाए? जब एक time था where people were saying, oh, Ankur Warikoo, but he couldn't, with NearBuy, couldn't succeed and scale it into a very large business.
Thank you firstly for having me. It's such a pleasure. I love the start of what you said, Shradha, because for the last 14 odd years, 12 of them have been in a journey where it is very similar to what you and I would experience on a daily basis, funded startups and this intensity, this hustle culture, fail fast, all those cliches that get thrown at us, which we may not even have built on our own. We just learned it from some other, ये अच्छा लग रहा है, इसको करना चाहिए. And I was part of that machinery for the longest time until I realized it works for some people, but it doesn't work for some. And when it doesn't work for some, it's very hard to identify कि वो क्यों और कहाँ गलत हुआ. So I'll give you the story of NearBuy, which I don't think I've ever shared this in such detail publicly as I would today. NearBuy raised money from Sequoia, and it was an enviable first check of $17 million. The first ever check that Sequoia cuts for NearBuy, 17 million. And in my head, it was lower than what we should have raised. And everyone else was like, what? $17 million तुम्हें पहले check में मिल गए? And then I made a cluster of mistakes as the founder, chasing growth, ignoring profitability, becoming part of this hustle culture, becoming part of this tribe, attending such events, and no offense to TechSparks and you and what you do all commendably, but just this cocoon, जहाँ ना एक कुएं के मेंढक बन जाते हैं और हमें लगता है कि यही दुनिया है और इसके बाहर कोई दुनिया नहीं है और किसी को अगर टेक की दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है नहीं पता है तो वो एक लूजर है. वो एक 9 to 5 के ग्राइंड में अपने ज़मीर को बेच चुका है. And no, if you're not a founder, you're not the cool person. And I was drinking my own Kool-Aid in that sense. Kool-Aid is also a very VC term, which I figured while in the conversations with VCs. And here's what happened. NearBuy was operating in a market which is completely a function of the growth of disposable income in this country. It was discretionary spends, restaurants, spa, salons, movie halls, entertainment zones, blah, blah, blah. And wahan, the growth was nearly not as much to provide for the exponential ambition that we would have had or sold to a VC. Because we were like, hey, we're going to become a unicorn, and jaldi hone wala hai, aapko wait karna nahi padega, 100 million pe ye funding ho gayi hai, to bas thode hi mahino mein $1 billion hone wala hai, and we will all party. But clearly that wasn't happening. And when it wasn't happening, I saw a very different side of this capital raising trend, which again has nothing to do with investors and how good or bad they are. They are not in the business of building businesses. They are in the business of entering and exiting businesses. That's how they make their money. And that is credit to them doing it so commendably well with all the risks that they have to take. And we recently had yesterday a big calamity in the crypto world. But the truth is, they will eventually exit. you. And they would only hope that they do it on favorable terms. But even if it doesn't, they will still exit. Now, what happens is, if you are not growing as per the dreams that you've sold, it will never be a really nice, happy conversation. So NearBuy at its peak was doing $100 million of sales and was profitable, but was a failure. Because we were not a unicorn, which is what we had sold as a dream, both to ourselves as founders and as well as to our investors. But if any other day someone were to tell me that we do 600 to 700 crores of sales a year and profitably, I would give my right arm and left leg to be an owner of that business. But here, every single day, I felt like a loser because I hadn't made money for my employees, for my investors, definitely not for ourselves. And that was just a reality check. It was like, we hear this story and we hear this survivorship bias, जहाँ यूनिकॉर्न आ चुका है, सेकेंडरी हो चुकी है, गाड़ियाँ, बंगले सब खरीद लिए हैं, and everything is kosher. But we will very rarely hear about the big disasters that happen, not in terms of funding being lost, but people never even getting to that position where they're spoken of because they weren't hitting that. And that's why I was very clear that's not the game I want to play. I want to play it on my terms. And that's why what I'm building right now is singularly, diametrically opposite to what I've done for the last 12 years.
Tell me, वहाँ से जो था वो ट्रेडमिल से उतरकर यहाँ की जर्नी के बीच में एक गड्ढा हुआ होगा, and वो गड्ढे में हम रहते हैं हमारे दिमाग में, right? That insecurity, the sense of not having accomplished, the sense of I didn't do what others did, all those things. How did you process that, and how did you work on getting out of that mindset?
I'd be lying, Shradha, if I said that it was hard for me. It was actually easy for me. And
how?
I'll tell you how. I am a student of reflection. Right? So when Bhavish was here, and when you said failure, and he said introspection, I was like, boss, yeah. Because we are grown up on a culture where we want either of these two things. Either we want never to fail, kabhi bat zindagi mein harna, or if we fail, then very quickly move on. Jaldi jaldi karo, aage badho, aage nahi, kuch nahi hota, aage badho.
Yeah.
And both of these are such disastrous ways of looking at life, because whenever you fail, there's a reason you got there in the first place. And it's such an injustice to that experience if you were to quickly move on and not reflect on how you got there in the first place, because then you are setting yourself up for potentially another failure happening. So when I went through all of this, I had already processed what was happening. I was processing it every single day. I was never in that mode where I was like, oh, this happened, let's move on, let's do the same thing. I would just check myself out, and I was like, how the F did we get to this point? How did I fail so disastrously at making this decision? And whenever I did that, it just made me richer in my experience and my own understanding of myself. And I love when people tell me where I'm wrong, because that only improves me. And I love when people call out my bullshit, because that only helps me become a better person and see a different side that I haven't. So by the time I had decided to step down as NearBuy CEO, in my head, I did not bear any guilt of what had happened. I just wished things were different, and I made a mental check that, hey, while we were going through all that we were going through, and it was nearly never an easy journey, did we treat people with respect? Did we stay committed to our mission? Did we never cut corners? Did we always stand true to our values? And the answer was yes, 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 yes. तो मैंने किसी को कभी भी एक capitalist दरिंदे वाले approach से नहीं मारा. And if that was true, then I was like, I stood true to myself, and things didn't work out, which is perfectly fine. I'm not going to kill myself for that. And everyone who's worked at NearBuy or experienced us always had good things to say, even if they also wish things turned out differently. So I just moved on to what I had to do next. And that, I believe, is my superpower, that I do not let what people think of me get to me. Never. It is my definition of success, true success in life. It's not money, it's not fame, it's never. It's just the ability to do things that you want to do without caring two Fs about what the world thinks.
How did you develop that? You had it? Was it there?
It was because my life was a beautiful sequence of serendipitous events that got me to this point. So I wanted to be a space scientist, work at NASA, and be on Mars. That was my life's ambition. That was all that I cared about. Growing up, that was the only thing I cared about. And if you speak to anybody from my school and ask them, hey, Ankur Warikoo pata hai? Haan, pata hai. Kya pata hai? Usko NASA jana tha. That was the only identity I had for myself. And I went to the US for my PhD. I spent 2 years in the PhD program, was killing it. I was on 100% scholarship. I was top of my class. Everything was there, but I wasn't happy doing it. And it was such a dichotomous moment because I was good at that. And for the first time, it struck me that what you're good at and what makes you happy could be two different things. That was a shocking revelation for me. But when it struck me, I was like, I'm not going to do this because if I'm not good at something, I will never be the best at it. Sorry, if I'm not happy with something, I will never be the best at it. So I came back. And that was a really hard moment because my family was devastated. The world around me told me it's the worst decision that I ever make in my life. I was 24 years of age, no plan, no goal, no sense of what I will be doing in life. But I think all that training just built my failure muscle. तो इतना आप जब देख लिया है 24 साल की उम्र में देख लिया है जहाँ लोग तुम्हें ताने मार रहे हैं कि देखो माँ बाप के अरमान पे पानी फेर के वापस आ गए and I had a girlfriend at that point in time so everyone believed I came because of her. And
did you marry that girl?
Yes, yes, she is my wife now. She is my wife now.
So you did the right by coming back.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So and that is when I think a series of such events happened, which trained. And that's why I often say, and this is, if you could take one piece of advice from here, not that I'm qualified to give any, if you are scared about failure, the best thing you can do is to practice failing.
Yeah.
If you are scared of failure, please practice failing. And this is a great platform, and congratulations to Shradha and everyone in her team that's done this. There are so many people here that you do not know of, that you perhaps don't even associate yourself with. You walk into that room, you look around, you see 2 or 3 people, and you're like, nahi, inke saath hang out nahi karna hai. Approach them, get to know them, get to see what they know about the world that you don't. Most likely they will dismiss you because they're also thinking of you the same way that you're thinking of them. Ask for money from people. Go to a mall and ask for $100. Most people will reject it. Next time you're in a corporate elevator, smile at people and say good morning. Most people will reject you there as well. But the more you face such small, low-cost rejections, the more you train your failure muscle to actually be comfortable with failing because failure is an eventuality. You cannot escape it. You can only deal with it. And the way you deal with it is going to define whether that failure becomes the most important thing for you or not, or you live being embarrassed about that failure.
What do you have to say about this whole dichotomy most of us as entrepreneurs and people, not suffer from but worry about कि हम अपने में personal brand को तो ज़्यादा नहीं बढ़ा रहे हैं?
It goes back again to the cocoon that we are living in. And I believe, with no offense, but please take some, Bangalore is a big culprit around that. You cannot walk into a third wave or a Starbucks without a MacBook. Like if you walk in with a Windows laptop, they stare at you, they give you looks. I am a Windows loyalist. I don't know. Like one thing I often say, it's okay to have a Windows laptop. Bangalore, do you hear me? It's totally okay. But no, we have these constructs, and these constructs are not organic, by the way. This is not who we are as a country. This is all picked up. And we love it because that's the only literature we more often consume. Like, which is the last kick-ass business book you read on an Indian business person? You will struggle to remember that. But if I ask you, hey, Elon Musk padhi hai, Steve Jobs padhi hai, Jeff Bezos padhi hai, because those are the people that we have grown up and intellectualized as the forebearers of success. And I am like, that is not the real country. You step out and you'll see a whole new world which has nothing to do. There's a great story around this, by the way. I love taking heritage walks as a family. So we go every Sunday on heritage walks. And there was this recent heritage walk we took to Purana Kila, which is a wonderful monument in Delhi. And some people were really nice. They recognized me. So they were like, oh, we read your book. And I was like, thank you so much. That's really nice of you. And there was this wonderful, very distinguished, gentle lady, clearly very rich, wearing a pearl necklace and all that. Right? So all the generalizations that you can draw. And she very warmly reached out to me. It's like, oh, you've written a book. And she had a tinge of a British accent, like Shashi Tharoorish. So, oh, you've written a book? I was like, yes, ma'am, I've written a book. What's it called? And I was like, yeah. अगर इनको मैंने बता दिया कि मेरी किताब का नाम Do Epic Shit है, she is going to judge me like nobody's business because I am sure she reads like intellectual literature. So I did say Do Epic Shit, and she's like, all the best. And so there is this world that we live in, and we feel pseudo-intellectual and feel successful within because they tom-tom you.
Yeah.
It's like my team is very young, and they work with a lot of creators. So apparently, and I'm nearly not as young as most of you, apparently the thing in creators is sneakers. And everyone's a sneakerhead. And apparently if you have Jordans, you are a different class of creator and so on. So everyone will walk in, and बेचारे अगर कोई normal जूते पहन के जा रहा है, then they will try and hide those shoes because you're not wearing a sneaker. All of these are just constructs in our head that we build. But be truthful to yourself. That's the only thing that matters. Like, who would you rather be than not yourself? Who would you rather be than not yourself? So if creating a personal brand comes naturally to you because you genuinely love sharing your experiences, you're not doing it because there is a ulterior motive attached to it, कि VCs मुझे ऐसे देखेंगे, वैसे देखेंगे, and so on, but you do it with the intent of it. If I were to go to your school and ask, hey, did this skill help you with your homework? And it's like, हाँ, ये तो बचपन से लोगों की मदद करता आ रहा है. And now what's changed is just the delivery of that, which is social media, call it personal brand, blah, blah, blah. Please do it. Please do it. But if it doesn't come naturally to you, and instead you are a writer, and you love to write, and that's how you express yourself, then do that. Or instead, if you are a one-on-one person, and you love getting involved with your teams and help them at an individual level, and not at a mass level where you'll come for an all hands, sab sahi hai, hum khuda hain, hum rock kar rahe hain, God bless you all, ye lo ESOPs, party, right?
And then dance.
And then dance, right? And then those videos go viral, and then you regret. Please be as authentically yourself as you can, because at the end of it, when you're on your deathbed, the last thing you would want to wish for is, I wish I lived life on my own terms. That's the last thing you would want to wish for. And wouldn't it be such a wonderful life if you actually said, मैंने जिंदगी वैसे ही जी जैसे मैं जीना चाहती थी. And I did not listen to anybody. And I always have to credit it to you. I know nothing about your life as deeply as maybe some others do. But when I look at you, Shradha, I look at a person who I'd like to believe has constantly lived life without it ever being easy, as somebody who just lived life on her terms.
Thank you.
And I have to say this because this is my favorite story about her. I first met Shradha in 2007 or 2008. IIT Delhi ka koi event tha. And I was an attendee. I had just started working in a startup, and it was really nice and happy. And I see this lady on stage, very raw, but immensely confident, despite that rawness, where a lot of people would be conscious, but she nearly wasn't. She was interviewing someone, I don't know who that person was. And I asked somebody, ye kaun hai? And she's like, I don't know. And that's when I looked you up, and I did that, and it's like, oh, something called YourStory and something called Shradha Sharma. And I have actively, and I feel like a stalker, I've stalked your journey since then, because it's like, this is not easy. It's not easy being you. Just the fact that you are building this. I'm sure a lot of people think of you as a journalist and not ever a founder or an entrepreneur, because it's just no, you're not running a tech company, you're running an events company, a magazine hai, online hai. Like all of these nuances thrown to just make it sound as if they are intellectuals, you're not. And that's it. Like, I am certain when things are gone and perhaps there is no one around you and you just have yourself, you'll be super proud of how you've lived life. And I think that that is going to be true. And I really wish that is true. And I would wish that for every one of you, every single one of you. This doesn't sound like a tech event at all now.
But Ankur, thank you for bringing this in the conversation about how we need to be ourselves, because somewhere, you know, I was saying that last 2 years, I just thought sannyas le lete hain. Kyunki, you know, you don't connect with anyone in the startup world, right? It has become so fake. It's all about funding. Koi milega. You know, I have a very good story I have to tell you. Someone met me. Abhi to main bhi celebrity ho gayi hu. So I can sit next to all the heroes and everything and be this. So just a few years back, someone met me. And he was like, hey, Shradha, and he shook his hand, like, to maine haath diya, just give like this. And suddenly he saw someone very big, thak, and he goes to that big person. And mera haath aise hi khada reh gaya. And there was this big founder, and that person ran, right? And I was just thinking, ye aise dauda, ye zindagi bhar daudega. First, do you feel bad for your first, then theek hai, at least, you know, so the journey, what you're saying is so important, because somewhere we all need to say that being original. And to me, the journey that you have made, as India, as all of us, we need to celebrate your journey, because, you know, you are representing a lot of us who will not become unicorns, who will not have the worldly benchmarks of success, but the personal brand, the Ankur Warikoo brand that you've created, today gives inspirations to millions of people. And thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And before I let you go, I have to ask, you told कि be yourself, मगर be yourself में पैसा नहीं बनता, अंकुर.
नहीं, पैसा बनता है.
हाँ, मतलब आपका बन रहा है.
नहीं, नहीं. You know what? Okay, so I'll tell you this, and this is one of my favorite. But please complete your question, and then I'll.
इसीलिए मैं पूछना चाह रही हूँ कि कैसे बनाएं, कैसे बनेगा. Give us some tip on that.
Okay, so the challenge with money, Shradha, is it is never the absolute amount of money that we're running after. It's always the relative amount of money we're running after, and that creates the problem. So I recorded a video which I thought would not work because it was a very personal video. If I were to ask this, and you have to give me a show of hands right now, how much money do you need in life? Do you have an exact number? How many of you have an exact number of how much money you need in life? Show of hands. Yeah, less than 5% of you. Here's why that's a disaster. If you do not know how much money you need in life, guess what's going to happen? You're going to constantly run after money and never know when to stop. Never know when to stop. There are two modes of money. Money that you need for your life and money that you wish for if you were to get it. And of course, it's happy money. Until you do not know what is the money that you need for your life, you will constantly run like someone on a treadmill, burn your energy and not move an inch forward. So I've been very cognizant of how much money I need in my life. It's a surprisingly low amount because zindagi mein itne privileges hain that you don't really need a lot of money. Bachon ki padhai, ghar ka kharcha, kabhi occasional idhar-udhar travel. And that money, I guarantee every single one in this room can make within 3 months if they put their mind and heart and soul to it. But what you're chasing is 100 crore kab aayenge, 500 crore kab aayenge, 1000 crore kab aayenge, unicorn kab banenge, how will I become Mr. Beast, how will I do that? And I love, like for me, Mr. Beast, if you don't know him, that's perfectly fine. But if you do, Mr. Beast is the biggest thing on YouTube today. And he loves how he lives life because he earns a lot of money and he spends all of that money to making things that he loves, which is videos again. So he doesn't make a lot of money personally at his own level, but what he does is be cognizantly aware, I don't need that much of money. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use that money for something that gives me joy, which is again that content. So please go ahead and do that. I have made a ridiculous amount of money through this content creation journey that I would perhaps have never imagined I would make as a founder. And that has surprised me, but it is not because I am the hardest working person I know, the smartest person I know, or anything like that. There is nothing that differentiates me from anyone here in this room. You'll be surprised at how much you will end up making if you were to just be cognizantly aware of how much money you're running after in the first place.
Wow. Wow. Please, guys, I don't have to say this. A very, very big round of applause to Ankur Warikoo. Because to Ankur, again, I've been saying, I said this to many of the entrepreneurs, Nitin Kamath, you are also giving all of us in India, young people, a framework. Matlab, marwao mat. You can become an Ankur Warikoo. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, and thanks for coming and talking to all of us. Thank you, Ankur.
Thank you for doing things.